Greetings to everyone. Friends, today we are reviewing the long pips Dawei 388D-1 without sponge from the Chinese brand Dawei. These are very successful long pips, especially considering their price. It's surprising how cheap they are, especially given how well they perform. And now you see ball bouncing and spin generation tests compared with another well-known long pips rubber Neptune. Many long pips players are familiar with Neptune and have tried it before, so I will review the Dawei pips in comparison to Neptune to make the review easier to understand for you. The speed of these pips is average. On a medium-speed offensive blade, a below-average level player can handle them reasonably well after some practice. For an above-average player, pips are easy to manage. Compared to Neptune, the Dawei pips are faster. Neptune is slightly slower. These pips cannot be described as hard, nor are they particularly soft. Their spin-generating ability is minimal by the standards of a regular inverted rubber, but for long pips, they produce a noticeable amount of spin. They also react significantly to incoming spin. Even Neptune, which is known for its high grip, reacts less. This likely means the ball stays on the pips slightly longer, increasing their responsiveness to incoming spin. I am used to other long pips that are harder and faster. I found the Dawei pips easy to adapt to. Confidence in my strokes came quickly. Please note that the blade used for testing is an offensive one with arylate carbon. On it, these pips provide excellent control. Overall, the behavior of the rubber is logical and predictable. The base of the top sheet of these pips is thin. I initially did not pay attention to this and applied glue, which I later regretted not using a glue sheet. There's a risk that the pips might start to curl and stick to themselves due to the glue's effect. It happened to a small extent. Therefore, I recommend applying these pips using a glue sheet. By the way, you can purchase these pips using the link below this video. Blocking at the table is very controllable, considering that these are pips without a sponge. You can block passively, block with a push with a relaxed hand, or with a slight backward movement. Chop blocks with vertical or sideward motion are also possible. Essentially, every type of block is achievable. Against strong topspin, you need to close the racket angle, since the ball grips the pips and tends to fly up and off the table. There is some reversal on passive blocks, but it is minor. Sometimes the ball spins moderately, sometimes very little, and sometimes not at all. Likely, the opponent varied the spin of their top spins. Overall, the disruptive effect of the block is not high. So, if you're playing against someone experienced against long pips, avoid making the same block to the same location repeatedly. However, if you vary your blocks in terms of placement and technique, the blocking becomes effective and can be used frequently. Personally, I found it harder to land blocks on the table using Neptune pips. Let me emphasize that this is not about a lack of disruptive effect. The primary strength of these pips in blocking lies in their controllability. The ability to pressure your opponent with accuracy of hitting the table, the frequency and the variability of the block. Some disruptive effect is a bonus. My blade is on the softer side. If your blade is harder, the disruptive effect will increase slightly, though it will still remain a secondary aspect. By the way, friends, visit our store more often. It will be your best way of thanking us for our videos. Attacking is another strong point of these pips. I wanted to attack with them even while receiving the serve. You can perform something similar to a flat punch, a counter drive, and of course you can attack against backspin. You can also perform a topspin, and it comes out well with these pips, though this also depends on your blade. If the blade is particularly stiff, the topspin might become too risky. You can attack with power or with precise placement, depending on the situation. Against a convenient ball, you can counter-attack with a counter drive, if you have enough technique and reaction speed. Overall, these pips suit aggressive play. In serve return, you can try various techniques, even a topspin if the serve is not too fast. Pushing with my offensive blade is stable, lands on the table reliably, but lacks a disruptive effect. The main strength of pushing with these pips lies in ball control, and the ability to place the ball confidently in the places that are inconvenient for the opponent. Against an easier ball, you can also attack with a counter drive or topspin using these pips or the other rubber. You can also chop against a flat ball or the serve with unclear spin. You can add a bit of spin, or return a flat ball with slicing motion that resembles a chop rather than a push. If you receive a ball with side spin, chopping it causes some transformation of the spin. It is comfortable to defend with these pips. You can chop all day long and also perform deep blocks. That said, these pips are not primarily designed for defense. If defense is your main strategy, consider pips that allow you to vary the characteristics of your returns more fully. Neptune is better at that. These Dawei pips are simply very stable in defense. They are enjoyable to defend with, but they offer fewer options for varying spin than Neptune. Yes, you can reduce the incoming spin and thereby cause some confusion, hoping to provoke errors from your opponent. But if you're aiming for competitive results, it will not be the most effective option. In that case, Neptune or some sponge-based long pips would be preferable. On a stiff blade, these pips will grip the ball less and thus vary the spin less. If you put them on a defensive or all-round blade, grip and the ability to influence incoming spin will increase. Again, I must mention that the far block with these pips is quite effective. By the way, please click the like and subscribe. It's a small effort for your fingers, but a useful support for our work. Now let's summarize. I would call the 388D-1 ox pips everything lands on the table pips. But that doesn't mean they are better than other pips that are weaker in it. These pips are designed primarily for close to the table play. That sets them apart from Neptune. They suit a long pips player who wants to attack frequently. You can combine blocks, attacks and various pushes. And of course, use your other rubber. Ideally, you should twiddle the racket and play both rubbers from both sides. We've already discussed the advantages of this in another video. Neptune can also perform all of these actions, but it is less convenient close to the table. I would even say that blocking at the table with Neptune is challenging. Neptune is not a blocking pips, it is slower, chops better, and defends better. So while the pips seem similar on paper, their in-game behavior differs more significantly. If you are pushed away from the table, defending with Dawei is comfortable. But these are not optimal defensive pips. If your aim is competitive success, you should try to return to the table. However, if you play for fun, you can defend with these pips as much as you like, and attack from the far zone with an inverted rubber, or defend with it. For recreational play, these pips are an excellent choice. They feel comfortable and land the balls reliably on the table. If your goal is to stay at the table and break your opponent's game with pips, then you should consider different pips, those with more disruptive effect. Such pips may offer less control. The 388D-1 can also serve as the first ox long pips rubber for learning, with one caveat. If you are a beginner, do not use them with an offensive blade. Choose something slower. If you're not a strong player, but you're already somewhat accustomed to table tennis, have grasped the basics, and have played in tournaments, and now want to try ox pips for the first time, then feel free to glue them onto your current blade and test them. You may find you can handle the speed and play well. However, for initial training, if you already own an offensive blade, it's better to start with slower pips, such as Dawei 388D, without the one in the name. That way, you'll land more balls on the table, and will be able to study in comfortable conditions. If you have any questions about long pips, feel free to ask in the comments.